I just to explain, it ends with justice.
Yeah.
This is a documentary that this YouTuber's working on to bring down Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds.
Oh my God.
And if you give this guy $150, he sends you this t-shirt, but more importantly, you get your name listed as a producer in the end credits. So,
wow.
Right.
I'm just
You'll
doing
be
my
responsible for the takedown.
I'm just doing my part to because that's really important in my life that Blake Lively get her comeuppance in the world.
Clem, that's why we had you on. We really want to know where you are with Team Lively. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm oblivious to all that stuff.
Yeah.
I have no clue what's going on. I couldn't even tell you. I mean, I know who she is, obviously, but...
You know what? Good. Because you actually have a life. It will consume you. And so anyway, I didn't mean to crash. Y'all, let's go ahead with the interview because Surfside, looks like it's still kicking ass out there.
Yeah, I will give you the official Beer Net Radio welcome because Harry has dumps like a truck. You heard that here. Every millennial should get that joke.
Mondos.
I'd like to welcome to Beer Net Radio Clement Pappas, co-founder of Stateside Brands, which is the parent company of Surfside, the first comer in the vodka iced tea RTD space. The brand has been a 5-alarm fire, finishing last year around 5 million cases and looking to double that this year. And despite Surfside's popularity, the brother brand, if you will, Stateside Vodka-soda, is also coming up in the ranks, starting to rank as a top RTD in the on-premise. We'll get to that in a second. But bottom line, the company is still humming despite all of the competition heating up. Sun Cruiser and Skimmers. So we're thrilled to have Clem on yet again to talk about summer plans and more. Welcome, Clem.
Thanks. Great to be here, as always.
Awesome. Okay, so year to date, so far as we can tell and scanned, you guys are still the leader in the vodka tea space. Again, fierce competition. So what can you share about where Surfside sits at almost the mid-year point?
Yeah, we've been blessed. We're frankly delighted. We kind of budgeted and, we're obviously not a public company, but, we have interviews like this and kind of, go on the record saying, hey, our goal is to double in 2025. So year to date, Surfside brand is up 273%. So closer to quadruple. I don't know that trend is going to hold, as we approach the summer months and, lap some much bigger comps, but great way to start the year and, a lot of positive signs. So very excited.
Yeah. Can you share? I mean, I can't believe it's almost May. It's insane. I feel like we just finished the summit, which is right around the time we had you on last, but do you any hints about how you guys are prepping for the big summer selling season, going to market? What are you driving hard right now?
Yeah, I've been on the road almost 100%. Got to take a family trip with my wife and kids last week, which was great because
nice.
I was starting to feel like I was losing touch with them a little bit.
I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but do you remember their names?
Paul
these children,
is my older one.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, I feel like from a geographic perspective, obviously we started in the Philly area, so that the Mid-Atlantic is kind of the home market for us, and then expanding up and down the East Coast. We feel really solid about our positioning and the state of the brand. Really Maine to Florida. We're in good shape. And then as you start to move into the Midwest and the West, it's a little spottier. We've got some really good hot spots. We've got areas that we need to continue to develop. Obviously the big states that matter, right? That you really want to put your stamp on: California, Texas, Illinois. So those are big focus areas for us. Coming into this year, we really are in a much better shape in terms of our distribution networks, fully built out, as almost totally beer, except for, a few really good legacy wine and spirits guys in the East Coast. But we also are going in with a lot more chain action. So, last year, this time we had a little under 11,000 pods. This year we've got 28,000, with still about 40% of gaps. That's just, latest data. Obviously still going through spring resets and closing out some of those gaps. So we feel like we're in a great position, obviously with chain and, just being on the shelf, obviously in those chain accounts is going to be a huge difference between last year and this year.
Right. I have one more quick one, and then I know Harry has to jump. So, and I know you guys have a lot to talk about. But so Boston reported yesterday, and who's that? But they were talking about Twisted Tea slowing more than they had expected. So I do wonder, in those states and in those channels where you do go with malt-based products too, do you think you guys are stealing any share from them? Right? I mean, it's tea, it's RTD. What do you guys see there?
Yeah, it'll be interesting as we get more data in those more chain states where we're on the shelf, next to them in a bigger way than we have been in our core markets. But, the data we have is that, there's an interaction there, but it's about 5%. Much bigger interaction, honestly, with High Noon is the biggest interaction we have, which is more like 17%. So we think there's definitely a trade up consumer. But there is also, if you think of, the historic Twisted Tea drinker is kind of, blue collar. A lot of their stuff is sold in, tall boy cans out of convenience stores. So, when you think of a traditional RTD drinker, it's more buying a multi-pack. It's probably a higher income demographic, et cetera. It's obviously a higher price point. So I think there's, certainly some interaction there, but like I said, it's not the biggest interaction we have.
So you're probably stealing the most share of anyone from High Noon, right? They're the largest. So
yeah, not that I'm gunning for them, but that's kind of what the data tells us.
Yeah.
I took a road trip this week, as Jen knows and Jordan knows, but we'll reveal that later why. But so I had an opportunity to stop in many C-stores, and I think I don't know why people like it at Boston are surprised that it's slowing. Their distribution is so good. Like I don't know where else they can go. Most of these C-stores had a wall of Twisted Tea in the cold box, or at least a half a door. Anyway, we're not here to talk about them, but I want to make that point.
The whole industry's slowing, right? So they're so saturated. It's kind of they're probably just being subject to the macro backdrop.
For sure, C-store traffic's down. The whole thing. And I've always wondered, why specifically does vodka-tea? Why does it do so much better on the East Coast than the West Coast?
Yeah, it's I don't know what the historical influences and how it progressed through history, but it definitely, there is, I think particularly with tea, there is, more of an East Coast tendency towards that flavor. I don't know, migration patterns, you have more Hispanic and Asian influence in the West, and, maybe that's just less tea. We're seeing lemonade do better in some of those markets than we are with tea. So that's kind of an interesting, phenomenon that we're experiencing.
I mean, I guess that makes sense that iced tea is something that pretty much everybody drinks in the East Coast and especially the South.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Clem, what's the split now between lemonade and tea?
Yeah, it's interesting. I pulled that data. So, of course, the tea was introduced first. And so that kind of had a running head start. So the tea is 55%, and we broke out half and half as its own category because I didn't know really how to, which one to put that in. So tea is 55, lemonade is 34, and then the remainder, the 11%, is half and half. But the lemonade is newer and it's growing faster, and we're seeing in some markets it's at or ahead of the tea right out of the gate. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, it may ultimately become bigger. And I think to Harry's point, with regional flavor preferences and demographic flavor preferences, the lemonade may be a more universal flavor.
I got a lemonade right now.
Oh dang, right. Jordan! It's not even noon, but it is Friday.
I like that Friday. Jordan and I just to paint the picture for those at home or listening. Jordan and I are in the same house, but we're just a different. He's upstairs.
You guys bunking up now? What's going on over
there? Well, the studio's being broken down later today, and so the cameras are already out. That's why he's on his own system up there. But you know what? That's kind of a badass background you got going, Jordan, with the Texas flag.
I had to makeshift all this, and I'm using like a little lava well.
Nice.
Harry, I had a question for you because obviously was at the conference, and one of the themes you brought up was the rise of this, I guess mainly sports online gambling. I'm just wondering your theory there, because I'm not going off any data, right? I mean, other than what I read in your newsletter, but everyone I know who gambles sports is a degenerate drinker.
Right.
And the minute they bet on a game, they drink more.
Right.
So I don't know where that money's going, but it seems
Right.
like it's still going towards alcohol.
No, that's a great point. And my limited anecdotal data supports that 100%. But my theory
I'm
is
trying to think of this consumer that's the sober sports gambler, and it's just
it's just
it's not nothing's coming to mind.
Yeah. I just don't know where they're getting their money for both. But
Yeah.
they're finding a way.
It's
I
not
guess.
like the mortgage. Yeah.
No, I mean, you can get a loan to get a DoorDash burrito these days, so it's pretty easy money.
You can put it on layaway.
Yeah, you really
Pay it
can.
off.
It's ridiculous.
And if you hit your bet, I feel like the first thing you're going to do is go out with your friends and
Right.
drink.
Celebrate.
Buy around. Yeah.
I think that strappedness for share of sin for online gambling, I think it's more applicable to the younger cohort, right? That's a little more cash strapped. I feel like that's kind of where I hear that coming from.
Maybe it's moving business from on-prem to off-prem.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of on-prem, let's talk about the stateside RTDs, right? The vodka sodas, because those had kind of been like the quiet, stepbrother, stepsister, and then this beer board report came out, and the orange vodka soda was one of the top RTDs. So, what's happening with that brand? You have new news for it this year?
Yeah, not a huge amount. What we've been trying to accomplish with Surfside has been, pretty ambitious. So that's, taken a lot of our focus. But, we built Stateside Vodka and Soda, particularly in Pennsylvania and kind of our core market. It's a strong brand. We've continued to gain share on High Noon. We're almost up to High Noon levels in the state of Pennsylvania. And so, it's really kind of become a core brand in the area, not as big as Carbless in the Midwest, but, kind of something like that, right? When you come to Pennsylvania, in particular. And so one of the things we noticed at the outset when we launched Stateside Vodka Soda was like, hey, how come there's no good orange? And, certainly regionally in the Northeast, orange is a big flavor. Maryland's known for orange crushes, and, going back when Russ, who from our marketing group, he worked for Stoli, and there was this real regional pattern to when Stoli was in its heyday of flavored vodka. Like orange was the big one in the Northeast, but maybe blueberry did better in the West, or so we always thought it was a no-brainer to come out with the orange. And really, when you look at it, I think High Noon just came out with a tangerine, so nobody's really had a good orange, and so that's been our top seller. Black cherry's a close second. But yeah, it rips. I'll get you guys some if you haven't tried it. It's really good.
Yeah.
And so, when we put it in to the on-premise, we tend to get really high velocities with it.
Okay, cool. And is that something that you guys are trying to expand in terms of on-premise focus, especially for the stateside RTDs, or in general for the whole franchise?
Yeah, we've concentrated most of our vodka soda, activity in our core market, because we feel like it's all we can do to kind of, get Surfside out and going outside of the core. And so it's just a matter of prioritization. We certainly think that that brand is has legs, and we've proven that locally. Can we scale it out nationally? I think it's interesting. I think a lot of our distributor partners, particularly on the Molson Coors side, don't have an item in their portfolio. The Bud guys have neutral, but the Molson Coors guys, right? Truly and White Claw try to come out with vodka bases, and those, I don't know if they're officially discontinued, but it looks like they're going away. So, we're with a lot of those guys with Surfside. We've, made Stateside Vodka Soda available to them, but we don't have the resources to really go out and do the heavy marketing and the heavy lifting with two brands at once in all these markets. So I think, as we get Surfside established in markets, there's going to be more opportunities to get behind Stateside Vodka Soda, and frankly, Stateside Vodka too is something that we still have a lot of belief in. I think Tito's, as much as you can say nothing but great respect for Tito, I think, the kind of 20-year life cycle of a vodka brand, it seems like they have peaked and plateaued, and maybe there's an opportunity for a new entrant there. And, that's something we'd like to take a look at. But, Surfside's our ticket to the party, and we've got to do our job there, and we've got our work cut out for us, right? We've got we're thrilled with the success, but there's still a lot of wood to chop.
Can you tell us what the price differential is with the Stateside RTD versus Surfside?
Yeah, it's line price. They're all
okay.
Yeah, they're all the same.
How do you differentiate the two products? Is there a different consumer, or is it overlap?
Yeah, no, there's definitely overlap, but we felt like, and you've seen different brands take different tacks, but we just felt like, being non-carbonated and being tea-based, we needed to differentiate the packaging, the name, all those kind of things. And so, that was really the thought process there to separate it out. And I think, it's obviously been successful, but I think, a lot of brands seem to be trying this, and you certainly see a lot of the bigger CPG brands try to extend their brand into too many categories, and then you feel like it becomes diluted, right? What does this brand stand for anymore, right? Is it alc? Is it non-alc? Is it malt? Is it spirits? Is it carbonated? Is it not carbonated? Is it tea? We feel like we've got a pretty tight definition of what we want our brands to be, and we don't want to let that get too loosey-goosey.
I totally agree with you. Just on a personal preference standpoint, I remember when Jordan and I were at the SAM conference when they talked about Truly with vodka, and I was like, we're just going to really confuse the consumer. You know why? Because I'm confused, and I'm in the industry. Yeah. This is my job to not be confused. I'm actively being confused, and the names are similar enough that you can tell it's the same company, Surfside and Stateside. I think that's clever, and but yeah, that you either want carbonation or you don't. And sometimes you feel like a nut and sometimes you don't. So I like the strategy.
No, I mean, we just had our town hall meeting, like our quarterly town hall with our whole company. And, we try to take pride in getting a lot of feedback from, all members of the company. And a lot of the stuff, like our tagline, no bubbles, no troubles, that came from one of our employees, Eric Aronson, that one came from Phil Luzzy. The Surf and Turf promo that we ran with the Surfside and a cheesesteak came from Eric Aronson in Baltimore. So we get a lot of ideas bubbling up, nice, which is awesome. But kind of wanted to say, hey, what does Surfside stand for? And Surfside has to stand for specific things. It's got to be vodka based. We're never going to use another base. Okay. It's got to be tea or lemonade. It's got to be non-carbonated. And it's got to be, it's got to have kind of the stats, right? It's got to be 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar per, 12-ounce serving. And I think if we start deviating from that, and, there's certainly a market for higher sugared products, for example, but if I've got consumers trained that, hey, Surfside delivers me 100 calories and 2 grams of sugar, and then we come out with one that's higher sweetness, sure, there might be a market for that, but now I'm pissing off the consumer I have that was, assuming that Surfside was going to deliver what they wanted.
Jay, I know you had some other questions.
Well, you just answered one of them. I was going to say, what's more likely to play with the different spirit space or to come out with a malt product? But sounds like neither. Neither,
none of the above. I mean, there's opportunities, I think, in all those spaces, but to us, we think they need to be different brands if we start crossing some of those lines.
And then I kind of had like a more broad question, talking about competition and then talking about how the different availability of your portfolio. I can't help but wonder, how did the copycat competition change the trajectory of Surfside? And what were your thoughts on the expansion of that brand prior to, all these other entrants coming in?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and frankly, my opinion on it is evolving by the day. Of course, you're annoyed. Let's be honest. You're like, I mean, come on, guys, and all of a sudden, everybody's got a can with a bunch of stripes on it and a sun on it, and it's like, okay,
starts with an S.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, come
No,
on, guys.
this is the beer industry has always been a bunch of 4-year-olds playing soccer.
Yeah.
You know, everybody just runs to the ball, and it's hilarious, and it's frustrating, and it's funny, but here we are. So
Yep. So no, I mean, when we were just a vodka company, and all we were doing was 80 proof vodka, we had the strategy of kind of going deep and slow. And, when Surfside hit in particular, we felt like, hey, we got to go fast. And we felt like, hey, we found kind of an open space on the board here that hasn't been occupied, and it's going to be a short window. So we got to go fast. And it's an ambitious thing to do. And you maybe increase your likelihood of falling on your face because you're trying to do too much. But at the same point, we know that others are going to rush into the market once they see this. And so it's like, hey, we want to be that first to market, first mover advantage. And so we've gone quickly. So far, I think we've been, largely successful in our approach. As the new guys come in and more of them are coming, it's more competition. In some ways, I think, I read one of the analysts was saying, well, more competition always benefits the first mover the most, because it draws more attention to the category. There's more shelf space. And if you can continue to maintain your position and the reputation in the industry that you are the leader, then I think it does benefit us. But I'm not going to lie, we're certainly having our dog fights, and the competition's pretty fierce. And I think the overall backdrop of the industry not being in great health, just kind of puts more pressure on it, because everybody's dying to find some areas of growth, and so you find a little pocket, and it's like everybody's just rushing in.
I do agree with that contention, though, that rising tide raises all ships, and the first mover collects the most advantage. Again, my position has also evolved over the years, and mainly to me, it's because of the retail buyer. They're always a little slow to recognize a new legitimate category, and they don't know where to put it. They don't know, how to price. And then once it congeals as a legit category, they'll say, oh, then they open the door.
Yeah.
And the consumer, so it has a big billboard effect on the shelf as a real category that draws the consumer attention to it. That's my theory.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think some of the door. And again, we're a new supplier, so when we show up at these chains, this is all we got, and we're on the outside looking in. Whereas a lot of the competition are big established companies that have lots of brands and have relationships with the buyers, and they can easily do swaps and things like that. Where those options aren't on the table for us. So I think in a way, with us banging on the door and saying, hey, let us in. And then the big guys come in and say, hey, have you heard this hard tea and vodka category is doing really well? We got a brand for it. It kind of validates in a way what we were telling them before they let us in. So, to your point, I think there is some benefit to it in a kind of strange second order way.
Right.
You are a new supplier, but a very successful supplier. Do you ever dig into like past stats and see how Surfside stacks up? I mean, has an indie brand ever gotten this big, this fast?
I have not dug into that. It sounds like a great story for BBD.
Yeah, I was going to say it.
Well, like somebody
that's our
should.
job.
I mean,
Yeah.
5 million cases in a few years. I couldn't think of one, and I was, sometimes people like to see, okay, how did
I know it goes back a few years. People have brought up that Mike's hard.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's the one that I was going to say was when Mike's came on. It was like 99 or 2000. I remember I saw it at MBWA, and I was like, "What is this?" And then all of a sudden, it was just everywhere. It was really fast. And then, of course, they did a two-peat with the with White Claw. But by that point, I wouldn't really call them independent.
Right.
But yeah, it's rare. I'll tell you that.
Well, so one of the ways that you can extend your first mover advantage is, of course, marketing, right? You have to constantly remind people that you're here. And you guys have made big investments with giant MLB franchises. So is that paying off? Will you guys continue on with that? Or what are your big marketing pushes going to look like?
And I know it's, sports is huge for us. And then, of course, making the partnership, and then there's all the associated stuff, right? There's outdoor and radio and, airplane banners, like in my background here, to reinforce those partnerships and POS and all that stuff. But yeah, we love the approach. There's a lot of different pieces to it, but baseball is certainly our biggest focus. We were lucky to start in Philly and have a great partnership with the Phillies, and it just kind of works. It's hot out, and you drink a cold Surfside at a hot day at a baseball game and have a hot dog, and it's just kind of like peanut butter and jelly. It goes together, and so we think it's a great place to introduce new consumers to the brand, and the experiential element of it. When you had I remember I had my first Surfside at a Dodgers game. It's like, it's a great way to introduce people to it. So, a lot of these partnerships this year are new. I think we've got 13 MLB teams total. Some of them, we did sign on with both the Mets and the Yankees actually in New York, and those have been off to the races because that market's on fire pretty well already. Some of the other ones, like we've done the Dodgers and the Giants, where we're newer to that California market. So it's early in the season, the results aren't in, but we're certainly planning to leverage those to the maximum, and we think they're a great way to get it out there.
Yeah, it's almost like the find your beach, though, of baseball stadium, right? It's like evoking that sense of place, right?
I was just thinking that, Jen. I was thinking the exact same thing, but I didn't know how to articulate it. So I'm glad
I haven't been drinking Surfsides all morning.
like Jordan and I, apparently.
Yeah, just one.
Just one. Just
a little
one.
baseline.
It's very light. It's a very moderate drink.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen? It's a movie, and I don't know if it's Viggo Mortensen or whatever, but the whole premise is that like somebody wrote a book that we're born with a BAC level that's just too low. You just need to have a steady state. But of course, they take it to the ridiculous degree. It's actually a really good movie.
It is a movie. It's pretty good. They try and maintain like a 0.08 or something, or 0.05. Yeah. I've tried that. It's hard to do. I'm curious about the airplane banner because, that was such a great way to advertise like back in the like 60s and 70s. But, do y'all do airplane banners?
Oh, yeah. Philly area, Jersey Shore is like the go-to spot, but I would say up and down the East Coast, it's a staple. You're on the beach on a Saturday. It's like, every 5 minutes you hear that kind of like lawnmower motor come across.
Yeah. And is it cost effective? I mean, are you able to share like how much does it cost to do an airplane banner like on the Jersey Shore?
It really, I could get you answers, but it really depends on how long, like we have them now. We started just doing South Jersey, and that was like one cost, and, depending on what time and when you ran it. And then now we're doing, I don't know, the long run is like from, I think, Virginia all the way up to,
oh, wow.
I don't know, somewhere. It has to stop and refuel, and then it goes up to Cape Cod or something. So, that gets more expensive, and the frequency, but
that's so cool. It seems like such a silly way to advertise, but everybody looks at it. Yeah. Everybody. And you're looking at it and you're like, oh, yeah, Surfside, that's a good idea. But when you're literally on the beach looking for something to drink. It's yeah. Anyways, that little sidebar there.
That's funny. The original AI. Never mind. I'm curious. I have to ask this question. I'm sorry that I have to ask this question. Are you guys being affected by tariffs, or do you have everything like a whole stock already of cans, or what's that looking like for you guys?
Yeah, I would say we're less affected than some of the others, but the biggest thing really is aluminum, and I mean it's been a bit of a seesaw, but we'll see where that lands. I mean, our aluminum is all sourced from the U.S., but it's a world market, and so if tariffs go, then the U.S. price goes up. So we're seeing some impact there, but we think it's at a level that we'll be able to absorb. Again, I mean, that could change in 20 minutes, and we could have 300% on tariffs, and there'd be some tit for tat. But based on the level that we've seen, yeah, we're not thrilled about it. It's going to be a cost we're going to have to absorb. The good thing for us is as we're growing so rapidly, we're achieving economies of scale. And so, we're able to kind of offset some of those cost hits with the economies that we're achieving pretty rapidly. And, if we can, we think, we're at the price structure we're at for a reason. We think it's the right place to be and it works. And so I don't really want to disrupt that unless it's really, a necessity economically.
Yeah. And we had talked about you guys doing some larger format cans, right? How's that going? Are those in market? Are they trending well?
Yeah. So, of course, right after we bought in like a shit ton of those slider lids, the TTB dropped a regulate, and I was on our supply chain guy. I'm like, you got to buy a bunch of these. I don't want to run out, because it's like
talking
only
about
one
the resealable.
Yeah. It was like only one company. You'll like this, Harry. This is interesting. This is what I've learned. So the can companies for years have been the guys really pushing all the anti-plastic PR. So all the stuff that you're getting about, turtles with straws in their nose and the patch of, plastic in the ocean and stuff. That's actually the can guys, which is pretty sneaky, interesting. So they're trying to push everybody into cans. So the big guys will not come out with that slider top because first of all, it's not a lot of volume, so they don't care, but they cannot be seen to have any plastic on their packaging because that's like their whole goal in life is to get rid of plastic. So at any rate, none of the major guys would make it. So there's like one company, that makes this product and has the patent on it, but it's been difficult. They like it's the most it's the most environmentally unfriendly thing I've ever seen. It's like they make the end in like Arizona or something, and then they ship it to Mexico, and then it goes to like Dubai, and then they like ship it, and then they like attach the plastic piece to it. I'm not getting this exactly right, but it's
right.
Like I'm pretty close. And then they ship it back, and so it's like a crazy cost. Like it costs more than the damn can, and it's like a 6-month lead time. So up until the TTB changed their, guidelines on these standards of fill, this was the only option we had to go into a tall can. So I said, Ryan Seckinger's our VP of supply chain. I said, Ryan, you better order a shitload of these things because I want to get caught with my pants down in the middle of the summer, and we got 6-month lead time. So we bought a shitload of these things, and now we got to run through them, and we don't need them anymore. But at any rate, they're doing great in the venues. We're just getting into resets in the C stores, so I think it's a little too early to tell. We're also now with the new size options that are available to us, 16 ounce and 19.2. We're certainly going to take a hard look at those. I think, no official announcements, but I do think, we're pretty attracted to the 19.2 package for our product. We think that's, the right amount of liquid. Hopefully, the state taxes are so all over the place on RTDs, but we think that'll allow us to get to a price point that makes sense for singles in C stores. And it's not so much liquid that it's going to get warm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then C-store, you mentioned C-store resets. So how you guys doing with those?
Yeah, doing well. It is a really, when you dig into the RTDs, it's a really like scattershot set of states that can do it. So it's like Virginia, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and then like Arizona, Nevada. California C stores can carry RTDs, but they have to get a full liquor license. And so, I don't know, there's 1,700 7-Elevens or something like that in California. It's like only 110 of them have liquor licenses. So you wind up in California, unless these guys all decide they want to get into the game or the law, gets changed slightly. Effectively, it's not a great C-store market for us, even though it's technically possible. So, like I said, the laws are evolving. We'll see where it goes. But, in the markets where we can be in C-store, we're certainly looking to play there. And I think it's a great opportunity, again, to drive trial. And if we can be on the shelf next to some of the beer and malt alternatives, and we're going to be a trade up, but if we're a reasonable trade up, if we're a 20% trade up or a 50 cent or $1 trade up, we think people will try it and like it.
And that's the threshold, right? You got to stay in that threshold. Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think if you see, whatever, White Claw or Twisted Tea or a Voodoo Ranger or something, and it's $3.99 and we're $6.99, like that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Maybe we could be $4.99. So that's part of the calculus of what size do we wind up in.
Yeah.
But it is kind of like, it gets to be a big spreadsheet because all these states have all different tax levels, and it's like, all right, where are we going to be here? Where are we going to be there?
It seems for a dollar is because then you're in a human brain's mind, you're like, oh, it's just $1 more, for something that's a little different. When it gets to $2, you're like, I'll just stick with with what I got.
Totally agree.
Little psychology today from Harry. Yeah. And please, I am not a licensed psychiatrist. I just want everybody to know that.
Dear Lord, I hope not.
Lest anybody get any. Well, good. I was going to wrap it up, but I'm sure Jen has one more. Maybe Jordan does.
Jordan might.
I just wanted to ask, what's the latest on new headquarters? Because I know that's been kind of an ongoing thing where you find one, then you get too big, and then you have to look for a new one. So what's the latest there?
So after this call, actually, I'm going to go tour some office spaces. To kind of explain, it's a little complicated. I'll try to make it user friendly for your podcast listeners. But we basically have 3 pieces of our operation, right? We have our office, which is standard office needs. Then we have a self-distribution operation in Pennsylvania because of the way the laws are in PA. The route to market for our products is either through the PLCB or self-distribution if you're an in-state producer. So we actually have a little distribution operation that's currently housed in its own building. And the building that we initially thought we were going to move everything to is now just going to be a distribution center, just for our self-distribution operation. And then we have our distillery, which we're still at our original distillery and our original location. And we're kind of evaluating how fast we scale up our vodka production. But at present, we feel like we have headroom there. And so there's no plans to move the distillery operation. All our canning operations are all co-packers, so that doesn't really factor into it at this point anyway. I mean, maybe there's a day down the road that we look at bringing that in-house, but nothing on the horizon currently. So really the biggest thing is we were busting at the seams at our office. It was kind of funny, actually. We had 12 people crammed into a room, and then we outgrew all the rooms we had, and then there was like a apartment building that went up next door, and we started renting we started calling it like our flop house.
Oh my God.
Flop house.
And it's like, I don't think it's technically allowed that you like have a business office in a residential apartment, but I don't know. We didn't get busted. So I think we made it through.
Wow.
But we wound up getting like a short-term sublease of like a ready to go office that was all, had all the furniture and was all laid out. So we just kind of took advantage of that, and we're there now. But we're looking for a permanent home for the office. So that's something that, hopefully we'll have sorted out by the end of the year, and hopefully we can do something really cool.
Nice. Cool. Well, okay. I do have one more question.
Sure.
So it sounds like you guys are really starting to maybe a little bit more look at the full spirit side of things, but you're only going to stay with vodka. So how do you diversify there? How do you innovate there? Do you even need to? How are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, I think, we have a lot of belief in our vodka, the quality, the branding, the packaging, all of it. But, it's a mature category, and now, it's gone slightly negative more recently. And so, I think it takes a lot of, effort to get a vodka brand out there. People tend to be very brand loyal. They, I'm a Tito's man, I'm a Grey Goose man, and they get very attached to their vodka. So it's a pretty long sales cycle, and it's pretty labor intensive. So I think, when we're ready to be able to do more than one thing at once, like right now, it feels like we need to just be able to do Surfside.
Mm.
But I think, as we scale up and hopefully are successful at that and have the resources to kind of walk and chew gum at the same time, I think, we will get behind Stateside and we will get behind Stateside vodka sodas. I think, how many other new brands do we want to get behind? I mean, frankly, we feel like right now we've got more brands than we can support. And so I think the question is more what do we prioritize than what do we need to add to the mix at this point. So long-winded way to answering your question, but I guess I would say we already feel like we got more than what we're currently really maximizing the potential of. But, that's not to say the door would be closed down the road to getting into other spirits. But, we have a lot of work to do on the ones we have.
So no Surfside tequila. And no.
We already went over that. You guys are trying to tempt me. You guys are trying to take me off my brand messaging and get me in all kind of weird categories.
We just seen it before.
Yeah. Leave that to the big guys. I think it's so smart to stay focused, but
I have an idea. Just sprinkle some gold flakes inside the bottle.
Oh yeah, we used to do that. That was like the Fireball before there was Fireball.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Goldschlager.
Yeah.
Gosh, what a gimmick that was. That worked.
So,
well, Clement Pappas, you are already becoming legendary status in the industry in the short time that you've been here. We are glad to know you and to have you as a recurring guest on our little podcast. And we hope all your dreams come true, because that is the tagline of this podcast. And I don't want anybody's dreams not coming true. And we'll have you on in another few months and check up on your progress.
Let's check in, see how the summer results come in. That'll be fun.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But appreciate it as always, guys.
All right. Well, take care, and we'll see you next week,
Cheers.
ladies and gentlemen, on BeerNet Radio. Adios.
Peace.